The story begins under the bright, warm sun of the Caribbean Sea. We are introduced to a loving family enjoying a peaceful holiday aboard their beautiful yacht, the Orca. Tom, an experienced oceanographer, and his wife Julia, a dedicated doctor, are doing their best to create the perfect getaway for their 2 children. Their teenage daughter Cassie is enjoying the ocean breeze, while their 13-year-old son Ben is the center of attention as the family celebrates his birthday. The atmosphere is light, filled with laughter, festive decorations, and a bunch of brightly colored balloons tied to the deck. It is a picture-perfect moment, completely masking the terrifying disaster that is quietly brewing just beneath the surface of the water. However, the tranquil atmosphere is suddenly shattered when strange marine phenomena begin to unfold around the yacht. Without warning, a massive pod of migrating whales breaches the surface, acting incredibly erratic. The massive creatures swim dangerously close, and one of them accidentally rams into the Orca. The sheer force of the impact violently rocks the vessel, breaking the rudder and causing severe damage to the boat's propellers. Knowing they cannot remain stranded at sea, Tom bravely volunteers to go outside and inspect the damage underwater. While submerged, the situation takes a dark turn. Tom is suddenly struck on the shoulder by an unseen, frantic marine creature. He scrambles back onto the boat, wincing in pain. Thanks to her medical training, Julia quickly steps in to treat and stitch up his severe injury. But the family is left deeply unsettled by the bizarre and aggressive behavior of the ocean's wildlife. The strange events rapidly escalate into a full-blown global cataclysm. The sky darkens as a vicious, unnatural storm rolls in. High above, technology fails, and massive satellites begin plummeting from orbit, crashing into the turbulent sea around them. The sheer panic sets in as the Earth undergoes a sudden and violent magnetic polarity reversal. The laws of nature are completely rewritten in an instant. The sheer force of the storm and the shifting world knocks the family unconscious, leaving their fate hanging in the balance as the world fundamentally changes around them. When the storm finally passes, the family slowly regains consciousness. They step out onto the deck of the Orca, only to be met with a sight that defies all logic. The immense gravitational shift causes the oceans to drain away entirely, sweeping the water off the face of the region. The ocean is completely gone. The Orca is now hopelessly stranded on a vast, completely dry, rocky desert that used to be the seabed. The bizarre landscape of scattered wreckage and remnants of marine life serves merely as the backdrop as they immediately jump into survival mode. Tom grabs a compass, inspecting it closely as he tries to configure what just happened and figure out their bearings. Meanwhile, the chilling reality of their situation sets in as the rest of the family scrambles to gather up whatever food and basic supplies they have left on the boat. Trying to make sense of their new reality? An innocent attempt to perhaps signal for help or simply let go of the past? Ben releases the brightly colored balloons into the sky. They float high above the desolate landscape, creating a highly visible marker that can be seen for miles across the flat, barren wasteland. Little do they know, this innocent action will soon draw unwanted and dangerous attention to their exact location. While trying to figure out their next move, Tom manages to get the boat's marine radio working and makes a critical discovery. He establishes contact with a man named Now. Over the radio, Now provides them with specific coordinates and delivers a vital piece of information. The ocean will eventually return, and his submersible is the only vehicle that can withstand the returning water. Not long after the balloons are released, the family spots a figure in the distance. A silent, wandering stranger accompanied by a black dog approaches the stranded yacht. He appears to be just another survivor of the cataclysm, carrying a makeshift walking stick that is actually a heavy pole with a blade attached to the end. Believing him to be a fellow victim in need of assistance, Tom shows incredible compassion. They welcome the stranger, offering him kindness and a helping hand in this desolate place. But their kindness is met with sheer hostility. Completely unprovoked, the stranger suddenly lashes out. There is no time to react, no confrontation, and no struggle. Tom is struck completely unexpectedly, instantly dropping to the floor. Before anyone can process what is happening, the attacker fatally wounds him. In a sudden and heartbreaking moment, Tom tragically loses his life right in front of his family. Julia witnesses the horrifying attack from afar, completely frozen in shock. Snapping back to reality, she sprints toward the boat. She quickly hides Cassie and Ben safely inside, handing them a flare gun just in case the attacker finds them. The stranger relentlessly chases Julia all around the vessel. As she attempts to make a desperate escape by climbing out of a window, the stranger's dog begins barking wildly and lunges at her, signaling her location to its master. Forced to protect herself, Julia defends against the dog, ultimately neutralizing it during the intense struggle. But the delay allows the stranger to finally catch up to her. Seeing their mother in immediate danger, the kids emerge from their hiding spot. Cassie aims the flare gun and fires. The flare ignites the boat, quickly spreading into a massive fire. Using the fiery distraction, Julia and her children manage to escape the vessel. Moments later, the stranger also stumbles out of the burning boat just before it violently explodes. They flee into the sprawling, dried-up ocean floor, forced to trek on foot through the blazing heat and unforgiving terrain. As they look out over the horizon, the dried-out ocean floor is heavily littered with the remnants of human civilization and marine life. The remains of massive sea creatures. They see dumped toxic waste barrels. If you are completely captivated by this intense journey across the dried ocean floor, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel right now so you never miss another thrilling movie recap. However, the nightmare is far from over. The stranger survives the initial encounter at the boat and is now relentlessly and silently stalking the family across the wasteland, tracking their every move. Exhausted and grieving, the family eventually stumbles upon a surreal sight, a massive crashed passenger jet sitting entirely intact on the dry ocean floor, bizarrely covered in sea limpets. Desperate for a safe place to rest, they pry open the heavy door and take shelter inside the eerie, hollowed-out fuselage for the night. As darkness falls over the wasteland, Cassie quietly steps outside the fuselage to relieve herself. The stalker, who had patiently tracked them to the wreckage, uses the darkness to his advantage and attempts to silently ambush the teenager. But Julia, heavily guarded and fiercely protective, anticipates the danger. She intercepts the stalker before he can reach her daughter. A fierce struggle takes place in the shadows, driven by the absolute need, finally overpowering the stalker and permanently neutralizing the threat to her family. The next morning brings a brief moment of relief, but it is immediately shattered by a horrifying new discovery. As the family looks at the area where the stalker was defeated, they see something terrifying emerge. A massive, mutated, deep-sea arthropod, a monstrous crab, crawls out from the remains. This signals a brand new, even more terrifying threat. The abyss is waking up, and massive swarms of ravenous deep-sea creatures are emerging from the trenches to hunt for food. The family is forced to keep moving. Further along their grueling trek, they discover a massive, stranded cargo ship resting on the rocks. They notice that the ship's surviving crew members are down below, scavenging for supplies. But as Julia and her children approach the vessel, the ground begins to shift. A massive, overwhelming swarm of giant crabs aggressively attacks the area. The ship's crew panics, hurriedly locking themselves inside the heavy metal cargo containers and using defensive tools to fend off the creatures. Caught in the open, Julia, Cassie, and Ben frantically scramble to climb up the towering cargo containers to escape the clicking, snapping swarm below. During the chaotic climb, Julia suffers a severe injury as one of the massive creatures catches her leg. Meanwhile, a tragic mistake seals the fate of the ship's crew. Unbeknownst to them, the cargo container they used for shelter has a structural hole, allowing the relentless swarm to slide right inside. Once the massive swarm finally clears the area, the coast is left eerily quiet. Julia bravely ventures into the container, retrieving a defensive item and remaining supplies from the fallen crew. Digging through the remaining supplies, Julia finds a working marine radio. She manages to broadcast a signal and incredibly makes contact with Captain Now, a scientist and pilot of a highly durable landlocked submersible. Now delivers terrifying news. The Earth's polarity is about to switch back right now, and the ocean is rapidly returning. Time is now their greatest enemy. To guide them, Now fires a bright flare high into the sky, allowing the family to pinpoint his exact location across the rocky expanse. The final race begins. The environment turns incredibly unstable as tectonic plates shift and the distant roar of the returning ocean echoes across the wasteland. Massive rocks and boulders begin falling from the ridges above. In a desperate bid to save her children, Julia violently pushes Cassie and Ben out of the path of a collapsing rock formation. While the kids are safe, Julia becomes completely trapped inside a complex, shifting labyrinth of rocks, separated from her family as the countdown reaches 0. Forced to press on without her, Cassie and Ben desperately sprint the remaining distance across the chaotic terrain, finally arriving at the heavy metal hatch of Neo's submersible. Once they reach the vessel, they make a grim discovery. Neo is gravely injured and fading fast. He reveals a heartbreaking but crucial reality. His own time is up, and he is not going to make it. However, this tragic sacrifice brings a sudden glimmer of hope. With Neo unable to make the journey, the limited seating capacity changes. There are now enough seats inside for all 3 family members. Realizing they no longer have to leave their mother behind, Cassie tells Ben to stay put and exhibits ultimate bravery. She makes a frantic U-turn, sprinting back into the dangerous, crumbling rock labyrinth. Navigating the treacherous obstacles, she successfully reaches Julia and frees her, with the deafening sound of a colossal tidal wave approaching, and more creatures emerging to give chase. Mother and daughter sprint frantically back toward the submersible where Ben is waiting. In a heart-pounding final second, The three of them slide through the hatch together just as it seals shut. Through the vessel's thick viewing port, they watch in awe and terror as a colossal tidal wave of ocean water comes rushing toward them at terrifying speed. The family scrambles into their seats, frantically fastening their seatbelts and bracing for the inevitable impact. The massive returning ocean violently crashes over the vessel, tossing the submersible around in a turbulent, chaotic flood. The sheer force of the impact and the violent rocking is so intense that it knocks the family unconscious. Sometime later, the deafening roar of the water finally subsides. Julia, Cassie, and Ben slowly open their eyes. They look out the viewport to see bright, clear skies, realizing they have survived the cataclysm and have been carried safely back to the surface of a renewed world.